hello everyone, and welcome to the college football edition of Proline. It's week 13 of the season. We're off a dog weekend, both college and the NFL. I'm John Critton in Las Vegas, joined by Jeff Sod of Las Vegas Sports Services and Vegas odds maker Sean Hess. Going to take a look at a couple of games coming up this weekend. But first, boy, the top 25 dogs in college football went 9-5 against the spread. We also had 10-2 to the under Sunday NFL. And Sean, the big one on Saturday was Mississippi State against Bama. Dogs got there, but it wasn't easy.
Well, we talk about this a lot. I try to pick these marquee matchups. We've been kind of on that horse for the last couple of weeks, and each week we get these games, and they come down. That Mississippi State game, literally, and they will tell you that. The Mississippi State game, that last play, fourth down, all of that, saved the books. Saved them. That line opened, Jeff, around 7, and just steadily went up to 10. I think there was a little buyback. It might have closed at 9.5 or something. But, I mean, it was a huge amount of money, all of it on Bama. And they're up 19-0. And I knew two sports directors are maybe looking for a job if that score holds up, And then, same with Florida State, right? The money all came. It was 2.5. Went down to pick 'em. Everybody loved Miami of Florida, including some really good handicappers that I know that do well in this business. And so the books look bad, but Florida State's track record, right, Jeff? They don't show up in the first half, and they not only show up in the second half and cover the second half number, but they usually cover the game, and they just seem to have that history with this quarterback Winston. So yeah, those two games are the ones that really stand out. Teaser cards might have been a little tough, but even with teaser cards, you have to hit the other games that you put in there. So there might have been some keys, what they call keys, where you put the same team in every card that you have. And if you took Alabama on the teaser side, you might have snuck by with that because the line was probably around, it depends on what the number was. If it's a 6-point teaser, that line could have been maybe anywhere 2.5, 3, 3.5, 4, and they do cover that. Trying to remember the final score. Alabama won by 5. Does that sound right, Jeff? Because you're my man over here. You have to wait. You're supposed to know that off the top. Look at that. You're supposed to know that off the top of his head. Anyway, I think they won by 5. And it was the very last play of the game that decided that. Like I said, there was a sigh of relief on one side and a whole lot of full letter words on the other side. And that's just how it went. In fact, in both of those games, with the Florida State game and the Alabama game. And I think, Jeff, in that Florida State game, wasn't there a tipped pass or something?
Alabama won 25-20.
Thank you. I knew you'd know that.
Yeah, and what's interesting is the playoff system, too. I mean, there was controversy as to whether that would increase interest or it would saturate the bowls too much or hurt the bowls. But, Jeff, from what I hear, it's actually increased interest and increased wagering in Vegas.
Yeah, well, most people knew that, but the BCS people didn't want to admit it. Bill Hancock and the rest, they always tried to defend the BCS, and they always said it was with the regular season. You had a playoff. Of course, the opposite is true, which most people knew in the first place, so they didn't really fool anybody. Yeah, the betting increase is said to be about 10-15%, and there's more interest now because there's more teams playing for something, and it just makes sense that a playoff would enhance the regular season instead of hurt it. So the playoff system should have been done a long time ago, but it's finally here, and it's certainly better than that ridiculous BCS that we had for several years. Yeah,
and the resistance to it is still there because you would think it'll get to 8 games. You can just see it. It's 4 games. It's 4 teams, and eventually we'll get to 8 teams. But I don't think it's scheduled to do that for about another 3 or 4 years, or maybe even 5. But the fact is, all these years, every time these talking heads, and you know how I feel about those guys, but all they talk about is who's number 1, who's number 2, who's number 1, who's number 2. Now the conversation is who's the top 4. That's all you talk about. You haven't heard any mention about bowl games. Now, unfortunately, the playoffs are allocated to bowls like Rose Bowl, the Sugar Bowl, and then a national title game. But still, all the talk is about who's the top 4. And right now, as far as I can see, the top 4 probably haven't changed, but it's the 3 or 4 teams that are looking in from the outside. Like, is it Baylor or TCU? There's going to be that controversy right to the end. Florida State, because they don't exactly blow teams out, but they still win games, and they're the defending national champions, so you have to keep them in there. And then, of course, everybody believes that Alabama's going to beat whoever it is. That's really what the sentiment is. But the whole conversation is not about who's number 1. It's about who's the top 4 with the teams that are looking from the outside, looking in from the outside. And that's going to continue because playoff type of environments generate that kind of conversation, and the money always follows those teams. It'd be interesting to see about this Baylor-TCU thing. But what about Ohio State? Boy, Jeff, that quarterback, is he not a stud? That kid is really, what a find he's been. that freshman.
The
So
only time he has a bad game is when I take
yeah, when you
I'm staying off him yesterday.
Off the board, exactly.
yeah, they burned me twice too. So.
Well, the other thing with some of these top 5 to top 10 teams is that now if you blow out your opponent, it looks better than winning
Style points.
20. Yeah, so
Style
Sean, when you're making a number on some of these teams that are ranked 5, 6, and 7, do you have to factor that in right now?
Well, of course, absolutely. But, and we never talk about this, but when I make numbers, I am aware of the fact that there's also teasers out there. You have to, when I give numbers to different guys that need them, some of them not in town, but we won't talk about that. But the fact is, you have to deal with the fact you're also making a number for a teaser side because they can go 6 points one way or the other. Same with totals, which are even tougher. The NFL is tougher. The college football, anybody who teases totals in college football, in my opinion, is asking to lose money. Team can win 82-6. How do you tease that? I mean, but in the NFL, there is some value in it. So, but like Mississippi State, right? Even though they lost, they did cover the game. And even though these committee guys don't say they know the numbers, they know the numbers. Who's getting who here? If it's in the paper, and they must read the paper. But even Mississippi State, they're not dead. They're part of the outside team, with the 2 or 3 they're still looking in. And they have to go on the road to Mississippi. Now, I looked it up this morning. The line is with a limit on it. It's still +2 for Mississippi State. But a win there, and they do need some help, but they could get in. Depends on, because we got to talk about Kansas State. We got to talk about TCU. Kansas State, one of our games we're going to talk about on this show is Kansas State. They have a rough road to go, and we said that last time because they not only are on the road to West Virginia, but they also have to play Baylor in 16 days, and that's also on the road. So, yeah.
Yeah, we got.
That's what the talk is all about, is the playoffs.
Got a couple of Big 12 as well as Pac-12 games coming up. First, let's tell you what we have going on. Jeff, you hit another one of those blockbuster plays. This one was Saturday against. It was a Georgia game. They blew out Auburn with no problem. That's combined with the NFL now 15-5 with these high-end plays. Plus, you have a big game coming up this week.
Yeah, Saturday I had the Georgia blockbuster. I also had a 20-star win with Tennessee, and my best bet here on the show last week was Wisconsin. That started off losing 17-3, then they scored about 50 unanswered points.
Boy.
It's always good to have
what happened to them
that runs for 400 yards.
Yeah.
That broke the NCAA Division I record. The all divisions record for rushing yards in a game is by Cartel Bricks from Heidelberg College. And the only reason I mention it is that Heidelberg College is in this town that I was born in, Tiffin, Ohio. That's a claim to fame.
That's a trivia thing, right? Well, I got to take notes here.
Was that more than 400 yards rushing?
It was like 465.
Now, did you look that up in the newspaper? Did you actually know that from the hometown?
I knew that because it's my hometown.
Okay, all right. Okay, just want to be sure.
This time I'm going to have my rivalry game of the week. I'm going to have more plays at GymFights.com every day. And plus NBA. On Friday night I had a blockbuster on the Pelicans. They won by 48 points. So that's the kind of game.
That's great.
That'll get the cover.
They're playing the Timberwolves who are coming back from that long trip from Mexico City. I thought it was a great spot for the Pelicans. I took it, made it a blockbuster, and won by 48. I think they shot like 66% from the field. So the 2 blockbusters were easy winners this week. But we call it Gym Fights. Go to GymFights.com, but call LBSS at 1-866-575-8916. I'll have my rivalry game of the year this weekend, plus another blockbuster play. It's LBSS 1-866-575-8916, and go to GymFights.com every day for plays in all sports. All
right, if you call that phone number, you can get free plays every day from Jeff. Okay, and Jim Feist enjoyed the weekend as well. A 4-2 start in college basketball. College football Saturday hit his SEC game of the year. That was Georgia. And then Sunday his NFL situational game of the year. That was the Arizona Cardinals. Another win and cover for those amazing Cardinals. Jim has his college football rivalry game of the year. And you can get those plays in the NBA and college available at gymfeist.com. All right, guys, we have a Thursday college football game. It's a fascinating game. Kansas State against West Virginia. West Virginia is home. Open 1 now, up to 2.5. Morgantown weather is going to be, it's going to be cool. 28 degrees, 5 to 10 mile-an-hour winds. And a lot is at stake here because Kansas State, TCU, and Baylor all have just a single defeat in the Big 12. And then you got West Virginia at 6-4. They're 4-3 in the conference, but thinking about a bowl game. So it's a big game for both teams. This Kansas State team, they really have it all when you look at it from a matchup point of view. 7-2 straight up, 6-3 against the spread. If you like defense, they're 21st in the country in points allowed, just 21 per game. And they were very good defensively last year. And they have balance on offense with Jake Waters, 13 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. They're pounding out 36.6 points per game. So, Sean, this is a good team. It's well coached, and it's also been a cover machine. I've got them for 36-15-1 ATS in Big 12 play.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, this is a Thursday night game. It's going to be, in fact, we mentioned last week, if you're a football nut, this is your time of the year because starting like about 10 days ago, all the way till December the 8th, there is football on television every day. We got this one here. I mean, we're doing the show on Monday. There's Monday Night Football, and then Tuesday there's 2 college games, and then Wednesday there's 2 more college games, all on TV. And then Jeff, I think Thursday and Friday, each day, 3 more college games each day. I mean, if you love, this is your time of the year. You love college football game. This is one of them. Marquee matchup. It's Fox 1's going to cover it. Goes at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Obviously a Big 12 game. No divisions in that conference. You know, we talked about Kansas State in the past. They've really had a rough road to go. They beat West Virginia in the last 2 years, and pretty handily too, 35-12 last year, and then 55-14 the year before that. So, and they did that as a 3-point dog, by the way. But the fact is, it's a tough road for Kansas State. Now they are rested, 12 days coming off that really bad, and this is the beginning of it. 41-20 road loss at TCU. And that game really hurts them as far as the national title goes. In fact, Kansas State just struggles. You had mentioned they're 6-3 against the number, and they are, but 5 of those 6 covers have come at home. They played 3 road games and barely covered 1. I think it was against Oklahoma, Jeff. Is that one? I believe it was against Oklahoma. But they don't play very good on the road. It's just the way it is. I love Snyder, and he's the reason why Kansas State is where they are, and he's a Hall of Famer if there ever was one. And you're right, they give up just 21 points a game on defense, which is good. The weather in Morgantown is really, it's not that bad. I mean, yeah, it's going to be around 30 degrees at game time. It'll get down into maybe into the 20s, and maybe a little bit of snow from the day before, but it's not going to be windy. It will be partly cloudy. So I don't see the weather as really an issue here. Kansas State is 5-1 in conference play. West Virginia 4-3 in conference play. And Kansas State obviously has a lot more to play for. I mean, West Virginia is really just trying to be a spoiler here. This is West Virginia's last home game. You know, I think that counts for something. I think there's some motivation to that. They just lost to Texas really bad. They got outscored in the second quarter, 17-0, and they just were not able to come back from that. This is something I throw out once in a while. You know, I do this 4 teams on the field thing, each team's offense, each team's defense. And another thing I do is the average lines for games. Sometimes you can find value for that. The average line in West Virginia games, if you add them all up, West Virginia comes out as a favorite of 1.6, and they win by 7.7. So there's a nice overlay there. In Kansas State, however, their average line is by 11, and they win by 15 points a game. West Virginia runs the ball better. Passing attacks are about equal, in my opinion, both quarterbacks. One guy has more touchdown passes but more interceptions, that kind of thing. You know, it's a tough game for me to call. But the fact is, Kansas State just doesn't show me enough on the road. Plus, even if somehow they get by this, they have to play Baylor in 16 days. In Baylor. That is a tough way to go. But they got every reason to show up here. But the fact is, and this game open pick 'em, by the way. The line open pick 'em, and the money's gone on West Virginia. It's -2.5. It probably get to 3. And I think it'll sit there. So, and in this business, if you keep chasing points, I mean, every time you take the worst of numbers, you're going to be sleeping on a park bench under a newspaper alone a lot of nights. But the fact is, in my opinion, if you have to bet the game, you have to go with the home team with West Virginia and lay the 2.5.
All right, well, this West Virginia offense, 12th in the nation in passing. They actually had a really good start to the season. May surprise people that they're on a 6-0 run under the total. The defense has improved from last year, but they couldn't be any worse than they were last year, giving up 33.3 points per game. However, the last 2 games, they've stumbled, lost 2 in a row, lost 31-30 to powerhouse TCU, and then Texas, with all their problems, just ran all over this team, 33-16 the last game. In fact, West Virginia allowed 227 yards rushing. So, Jeff, we have to wonder, who are these Mountaineers?
Well, they're 6-4, but they've actually played better than I thought they would this year. The 3 losses have been 3 of the losses have been Alabama, Oklahoma, and TCU. I think that loss to Texas partly was because they hadn't fully recovered from the heartbreak loss they had the week before at TCU.
Flat spot.
Yeah, Longhorns got off to a 24-3 halftime lead. West Virginia didn't wake up until about the 4th quarter. They scored 13 points, and it was too late. They lost 33-16. Clint Trickett had a decent day, 36-49 for 248 yards, but no TDs. Bill Snyder and the Wildcats finally met their match in a 41-20 loss at TCU. It broke a 5-game winning streak. TCU's offense was just overwhelming. 553 yards total offense, putting 334 on the ground. Bill Snyder is 10-1 against the spread off a double-digit straight-up loss, 17-7 against the spread. as an underdog in the last 5 years. Quarterback Jake Waters is completing 64% of his passes, 13 TDs, just 4 interceptions. The last 2 times these teams have met, Kansas State has won by a combined score of 90-26. So I would take this is a close game. It probably won't be one I'll bet on, but if I had to, I'd take a slight lean for Kansas State, but not a big play there.
Okay, well, I find it difficult to back a West Virginia team that just hasn't been covering numbers in Big 12 play, 4-10 against the spread. They got a weak defense. I mentioned they were 100th in the nation last year in points allowed. They're better this year, but still 66. And off those 2 losses, giving up 30 or more. And then with Kansas State, boy, what's not to like? Well coached, much better defense. They win even when they're a dog. And when they face a team with a winning record, 22-7-1 against the spread. And they're very good on the road, 12-5-1 against the spread. So I'll take the known commodity here as far as the coaching staff with Kansas State and Bill Snyder, plus the better defensive team. Also a good running team, which is going to help in cold weather like this.